I, Rebecca, 28 years old, stared at my bank account in disbelief. $47,832.16 gone in a single day. The money I had saved for 6 years vanished. My mother, sister, and brother-in-law had used the emergency access information I trusted them with. As I gripped my phone, tears streaming down my face, something inside me hardened. They had no idea what I was capable of. And now, you get to watch how I methodically dismantled their entire lives, piece by piece. Before I dive into my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by the people who should have protected you. Trust me, what happens next will show you exactly how to take back your power when family crosses the line. Before everything fell apart, I was just a normal, hardworking financial analyst at a mid-sized firm in Boston. I had spent the last 6 years living well below my means, packing lunches, skipping vacations, and putting away every extra dollar I earned. My goal was clear: save enough for a full-time MBA program at Wharton. It wasn't just a degree to me, it was my future, my dream, my ticket to the career I had worked towards since undergrad. My family had always been close-knit, or so I thought. Every Sunday, I would drive to my mother Janet's house for dinner. At 56, she was recently divorced after my father left her for his younger secretary. It was messy, and I felt terrible for her. I spent hours helping her organize her finances, setting up bill payments, and teaching her how to manage on her own. My sister Megan, 34, lived just a few blocks from Mom with her husband Tyler, 36, and their 2 kids. I adored my niece and nephew, often babysitting on weekends so Megan and Tyler could have date nights. I noticed they always seemed to be buying new things: a boat last summer, luxury SUV in the fall, and designer clothes that Megan casually mentioned but never revealed the price tags. There were red flags I chose to ignore. Mom asking to borrow $200 for groceries but showing up in new designer shoes the next week. Megan venting about credit card bills while planning another vacation to Cancun. Tyler mentioning investment opportunities that needed quick cash but never providing details when I asked. I dismissed these moments because they were family. That was my first mistake. The setup happened during a typical Sunday dinner 3 months ago. We were having lasagna, Mom's specialty, when the conversation turned to emergency planning. What would happen if you got in an accident? Mom asked, twirling her wine glass. No one would be able to access your accounts to pay your bills. That's actually a good point, I admitted. I should probably set up some kind of emergency access. You could trust us with your information, Megan suggested, a little too quickly. Just in case something happens. I remember how earnest they looked. How concerned. How loving. I wrote down my banking information, account numbers, and the special password phrase on a piece of paper and gave it to Mom. This is only for a real emergency, I emphasized. Like if I'm in a coma or something. They all nodded solemnly. Tyler even put his hand on my shoulder. We'd never touch it otherwise, Beck. You know that. 17 days later, I was checking my account to transfer the first tuition payment when I saw it. The balance, $329.47. Just yesterday, it had been $48,161.63. My hand shook as I checked the transaction history. A single transfer, $47,832.16 to an account I didn't recognize. I called the bank immediately, my voice trembling. I'm sorry, Ms. Harrison, the bank representative said after investigating. The transfer was authenticated with your correct password and security phrase. There's no indication of fraud. I knew instantly. Only 3 people had that information. I drove to Mom's house, barely staying within the speed limit. They were all there, Mom, Megan, and Tyler, sitting at the dining table like nothing was wrong. When I burst in demanding answers, their faces gave everything away before they spoke. We borrowed it, Mom said, not quite meeting my eyes. There was an amazing investment opportunity that Tyler found. Triple returns in 6 months. We're going to pay you back with interest, Megan added quickly. You'll have more than you started with. Why didn't you ask me? I could barely speak through my rage. Tyler shrugged. We knew you'd say no. You're always so cautious with money. Sometimes you have to take risks. You stole from me. I was screaming now. Don't be so dramatic, Mom said, her voice hardening. You're single with no kids. You don't need it as much as we do. Megan has children to think about. The money was for my MBA, I said, my voice breaking. My tuition payment is due next week. So postpone it a year, Megan said dismissively. It's not like your life is on some strict timeline like mine was. I tried reasoning with them. I proposed a written agreement, a repayment plan, anything to get my money back. They patronized me, calling me selfish for not wanting to help the family. Family helps family, Mom kept repeating. You're overreacting, Tyler said. It's just money, Megan added. I left in tears, their words echoing in my head. That night was the lowest point of my life. I had panic attacks thinking about my lost future. The admission offer would expire. The years of sacrifice were wasted. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. At 3 a.m., something shifted inside me. I dried my tears and opened my laptop. If they wanted to play with a financial analyst, I would show them exactly what that meant. I was done being the victim. From that moment, I became the strategist. The next morning, I called in sick to work and began my investigation. As a financial analyst, I knew how to follow money trails. More importantly, I knew how to find financial weaknesses. First target. My sister Megan. Through social media and some careful conversations with mutual friends, I discovered she had 6 credit cards, all maxed out. A friend who worked at her company mentioned that Megan had been taking unusually long lunches lately and coming back with shopping bags. I created a spreadsheet and started documenting everything. A quick public records search revealed something interesting about their house. They had refinanced 3 times in 4 years, each time pulling out equity. Their mortgage was underwater, meaning they owed more than the house was worth. Tyler's social media was full of photos of expensive golf clubs, watches, and fishing equipment that appeared within the last few weeks. The investment opportunity story was falling apart. My mother was next. I knew her routine included weekly trips to the Riverside Casino about an hour away. What I didn't know was the extent of her problem. I followed her one Tuesday and watched from a distance as she fed $100 bills into high-limit slot machines for hours. She wasn't playing for fun, she was playing with the intensity of an addict. I took photos documenting the date and time. When I accidentally ran into her friend Carol at the grocery store, I learned Mom had been borrowing money from several friends with gambling as the suspected reason. I added this information to my growing file. By the end of the week, I had confirmation my money wasn't in any investment. It had been divided between them, with Mom taking $15,000, and Megan and Tyler taking the rest. The money was being rapidly depleted on luxury purchases, gambling, and paying off some of their most pressing debts. I consulted with my friend Alicia, a lawyer specializing in financial crimes. The news wasn't good. Because you willingly gave them your banking information, the bank won't classify this as fraud, she explained over coffee. And family financial disputes are complicated. Police typically view it as a civil matter. So I have no recourse? I asked, feeling hopeless. You could sue them in civil court, but it's expensive and takes time. And if they've already spent the money? She trailed off. I'm sorry, Rebecca. That night, I expanded my spreadsheet into a full strategic plan. I created tabs for each family member, documenting 1. Financial vulnerabilities. 2. Professional weaknesses. 3. Relationship pressure points. 4. Social standing and reputation risks. I wasn't just going to try to get my money back. That was likely impossible. Instead, I would make sure they understood exactly what they had done by systematically dismantling the lives they had built with my stolen dreams. I developed a 3-phase plan. Phase 1, Financial Disruption. Phase 2, Relationship Fractures. Phase 3, Reputation Destruction. I set up an encrypted folder on my computer and a separate email account that couldn't be traced back to me. I created a timeline. 8 months to completely unravel their lives, starting slowly and building momentum. I would be patient, methodical, precise. As I worked, I found myself removing family photos from my phone. I couldn't look at our smiling faces without feeling sick. The last one I deleted was from Christmas, all of us in matching pajamas, laughing. I stared at it for a long time before pressing delete. They didn't just steal my money, I whispered to my empty apartment. They stole my trust. That was something I couldn't forgive. I began by creating multiple anonymous email accounts using VPNs so they couldn't be traced back to me. I purchased 2 burner phones with cash at different convenience stores miles from my apartment. No paper trail, no connection to me. My surveillance operation was simple but effective. I logged my mother's visits to the Riverside Casino, noting amounts spent, times of arrival and departure. Casino gambling creates records, especially for regular players who use loyalty cards. Mom was proud of her diamond status, not realizing it was documentation of her problem. For Megan and Tyler, I monitored their social media obsessively. Every purchase, every check-in, every boast became evidence. Tyler in particular couldn't resist sharing his new toys, a $3,000 drone, golf clubs worth more than my monthly rent, a luxury watch he ## treat yourself. Megan was more subtle but equally revealing, posting photos from spa days and designer stores with captions about self-care. I made my first move 3 weeks into my plan. Using one of my anonymous email accounts, I sent a detailed report to the IRS about my mother's unreported gambling winnings. I had observed her win a $12,000 jackpot one night, collecting the money with a massive smile, and I knew her well enough to be certain she wouldn't report it. I included dates, amounts, and the photos I had taken showing her at specific machines. For my brother-in-law Tyler, I took a different approach. Through casual conversations at family gatherings I was still attending, maintaining appearances was crucial. I learned he had been taking cash payments for side consulting work without reporting the income. As a manager at a tax preparation firm, this was not just tax evasion but a significant professional ethics violation. I crafted a careful email to his company's ethics compliance office from a concerned employee who had overheard Tyler bragging about his scheme. I included just enough specific details to make it credible without revealing my identity. Megan presented the perfect opportunity when she complained about her company's expense reporting system during Sunday dinner. "It's so stupid," she said. "No one checks the receipts as long as they're under $200. I could submit anything." Later that week, an anonymous tip reached her company's finance department detailing how certain employees, with Megan specifically mentioned, were exploiting this loophole. I included dates and approximate amounts based on her own boasts. The final touch in Phase 1 was a phone call to Megan and Tyler's mortgage lender. Using my financial knowledge, I knew exactly what questions to ask as a concerned relative about potentially falsified information on recent refinancing documents. Mortgage fraud is taken extremely seriously, and I knew an investigation would be opened. Then I waited. The results began to manifest faster than I anticipated. 2 weeks later at Sunday dinner, which I still attended, playing the supportive sister/daughter, Mom was unusually quiet. When I asked what was wrong, she reluctantly revealed she had received a notice from the IRS about an audit focusing on gambling winnings and losses over the past 3 years. "They're saying I owe over $23,000 in back taxes," she whispered, her hands shaking. "I don't have that kind of money." I feigned shock and sympathy while satisfaction bloomed inside me. "That's terrible, Mom. How could this happen?" The following week, Megan arrived at dinner in tears. Her company was investigating discrepancies in her expense reports going back 18 months. She had been suspended with partial pay pending the results. "Someone is out to get me," she insisted. "They're combing through everything, questioning legitimate business expenses." "That's awful," I said, passing her tissues. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Tyler's situation unfolded more slowly, but with greater impact. The internal investigation at his firm took 3 weeks, during which he grew increasingly anxious. When the ethics committee finally called him in, they presented evidence of his unreported side income and gave him a choice: resignation or termination with a report to the state licensing board. I don't understand how they found out, he confided in me, not realizing he was speaking to the architect of his downfall. Someone must have ratted me out. The family held an emergency meeting where I played my role perfectly, the supportive daughter and sister offering comfort and suggestions. Inside, I was cataloging every detail of their distress, the consequences of their betrayal beginning to unfold exactly as I had planned. But my victory wasn't without cost. I was having nightmares about being discovered. I'd wake up in cold sweats, checking my encrypted files to make sure nothing could be traced back to me. I lost weight, my clothes hanging loose on my frame. At work, colleagues commented on how tired I looked. Alicia, my lawyer friend who had become my unwitting confidant, expressed concern over coffee one afternoon. "You don't look well, Rebecca," she said. "Are you still dealing with the family theft situation?" "Just trying to move forward," I replied, not meeting her eyes. "Have you considered therapy? This kind of betrayal can cause serious trauma." I nodded absently, not telling her that my revenge was the only therapy I wanted. The first phase reached its conclusion when Mom called to tell me she had to sell her car to make a payment arrangement with the IRS. It was a modest victory, but seeing real consequences begin to materialize gave me the resolve to continue to phase 2. As my family struggled with their financial investigations, I began implementing phase 2, creating fractures in their relationships with each other. My plan had evolved based on new information I'd gathered during family interactions. They were already blaming outside forces for their problems, now I would redirect that blame toward each other. I started with an anonymous email to my sister from a newly created account, sendingtruth@gmail.com. "Did you know your mother gambled away $9,000 of your investment money at Riverside Casino last month? Ask her about April 15th jackpot. Thought you should know what happened to your share." I included a slightly blurred photo of Mom at the slot machines, date stamp visible, taken during my surveillance. The timing was calculated, 10:30 a.m. on a Tuesday when Megan would be checking emails alone at home during her suspension. 3 hours later, Mom called me in tears. "Megan just screamed at me on the phone. She's accusing me of gambling with the investment money. Someone sent her pictures of me at the casino." "That's terrible," I said, injecting concern into my voice. "Who would do such a thing? Do you think it could be someone who works at the casino?" For Mom, I crafted a different message. "Your daughter and son-in-law spent $24,000 of your investment money on luxury items instead of the business opportunity. See attached photos from their social media. They're letting you take the fall with the IRS while they enjoy your share." I attached screenshots of Tyler's recent purchases and Megan's spa visits, all date-stamped after they had taken my money. The seed of doubt planted, I watched it grow through strategic, concerned conversations. When alone with Mom, I would innocently mention seeing Megan with shopping bags or Tyler's new golf clubs. With Megan, I would comment on Mom's casino visits or new clothes despite her claimed financial troubles. "I'm worried about Mom," I told Megan during a coffee meetup. She mentioned having to borrow money from Aunt Susan, but then I saw her with a new Coach purse. "Do you think her financial situation is worse than she's admitting?" With Tyler, I took a different approach. Men often confide differently, so I invited him to grab a beer after he'd had a particularly rough day with his employment situation. "I appreciate you being there for me, Rebecca," he said after his second beer. "Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one taking this seriously. Megan's still shopping online, your mom's still going to the casino. I feel like I'm drowning while they're arranging deck chairs." "That must be frustrating," I prompted. "Especially since you're all supposed to be in this together." "Exactly," he exclaimed, not noticing how I was steering the conversation. "It was supposed to be an investment for all of us, but I'm the only one suffering consequences." I gathered compromising information about Tyler's mild flirtations with a coworker through social media monitoring. Nothing serious had happened, but there were enough late-night messages and inside jokes to create suspicion. I made sure Megan accidentally saw a notification preview on his phone when he left it on the counter during a family dinner. The tension was building beautifully. Mom and Megan were barely speaking. Tyler was sleeping in the guest room after Megan confronted him about the messages. The unified front they had presented when taking my money was crumbling under pressure and planted suspicions. It all came to a head at Thanksgiving dinner. I arrived early to help Mom prepare, strategically mentioning how stressed Tyler seemed lately and wondering aloud if the investment was failing. When Megan and Tyler arrived, the atmosphere was already tense. We made it through appetizers with strained small talk. Then, as Mom served the turkey, Megan made a comment about needing to watch spending on Christmas gifts this year because of unexpected financial issues. Mom's face flushed red. Maybe if you hadn't spent all that money on designer clothes, you wouldn't have financial issues. Excuse me? Megan put down her fork. That's rich coming from someone who feeds slot machines more often than she feeds her family. What I do with my money is my business, Mom snapped. It wasn't just your money though, was it? Tyler interjected. It was supposed to be our investment. Our future. Oh, like you're so innocent, Megan turned on him. Should we talk about those texts with Jessica from your office? I sat quietly, taking small bites of turkey, as years of family dynamics unraveled before me. Mom accused Megan of always being selfish, Megan blamed Mom for the divorce driving Dad away, and Tyler finally snapped. I didn't even want to take the money, he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. It was your idea, Janet. You said Rebecca wouldn't even notice for months, and by then we'd have replaced it. The room went silent. 3 pairs of eyes slowly turned to me, suddenly remembering I was there. I carefully set down my fork and assumed an expression of shock and hurt. Is that true? I whispered, allowing my voice to break slightly. You thought I wouldn't notice? Mom had the decency to look ashamed. Megan stared at her plate. Tyler, already broken by the previous weeks of stress, put his head in his hands. Rebecca, we never meant to hurt you, Mom began weakly. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly on the floor. I think I should go. Rebecca, wait, Megan started. Happy Thanksgiving, I said quietly, walking out the door. In my car, I finally allowed myself a small smile of satisfaction. Phase 2 was proceeding even better than I had planned. My family was imploding, each blaming the others instead of working together. Mother and daughter weren't speaking. The marriage was strained to breaking point. I wasn't prepared for the conflicting emotions, though. Part of me felt vindicated seeing them suffer, but another part felt hollow. Was I becoming like them, calculating and cruel? The thought kept me awake that night. The next morning, I received a text from Tyler asking to meet privately. He was the weak link, the one who, according to his outburst, had been pressured into the scheme. I agreed to coffee, curious what he would say. I never wanted to take your money, Rebecca, he said, looking haggard. It was Janet's idea, and Megan pushed it through. I should have stood up to them, and I'll regret that forever. I studied him, searching for manipulation. Why are you telling me this now? Everything's falling apart, he admitted. Megan and I are separating. Janet won't speak to either of us. I needed someone to know I'm sorry. For a brief moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy. Had I gone too far? Then I remembered the missing $47,832.16. My derailed future. The callous way they had dismissed my pain. I appreciate your apology, I said neutrally. But sorry doesn't pay my tuition. As I walked back to my car, I received a text from Mom. Her landlord was evicting her for late payments, and she wasn't allowed to see the grandkids after fighting with Megan. She was asking if she could stay with me just until things settle down. I didn't reply. The consequences were unfolding perfectly, and we were ready for phase 3. Just as I was preparing to implement the final phase of my plan, I discovered something that reignited my determination. While checking my credit report, a habit I'd developed since the theft, I found 3 credit inquiries I hadn't authorized. Someone had attempted to open credit cards in my name. A quick investigation confirmed my suspicions. Mom had my social security number from helping with my taxes years ago. Megan had my birth certificate from when she'd helped me get a passport. They had tried to steal from me again while already facing consequences for the first theft. This second betrayal erased any lingering doubts about my revenge plan. I wasn't just justified, I was preventing further harm. I compiled comprehensive evidence portfolios for each family member. For Mom, documentation of unreported gambling winnings, lies to friends about borrowed money, and the attempted identity theft. For Megan, evidence of expense account fraud, screenshots of luxury purchases made with stolen money, and text messages admitting to taking my funds. For Tyler, records of unreported income, professional ethics violations, and inappropriate communications with female colleagues. Phase 3 began with a carefully worded anonymous email to my mother's employer, a real estate office where she worked as an administrative assistant. As a client of Cornerstone Realty, I'm concerned about Janet Harrison's gambling addiction affecting her work. I've observed her at Riverside Casino during business hours on multiple occasions and worry about client information security. I attached date-stamped photos of Mom at the casino during workday hours. For Megan, I took a different approach. Her industry was small and reputation-based. I identified 5 key professional contacts from her LinkedIn profile and sent each a different piece of evidence about her expense account fraud, positioning myself as a concerned colleague. I'm uncomfortable with what I've witnessed and feel ethically obligated to share this information. Tyler was already unemployed, but his professional network was his lifeline for finding a new position. I created a situation where his inappropriate messages to his former coworker Jessica were accidentally forwarded to his previous boss in a misdirected email chain, ensuring that whispers about his behavior would follow him in his job search. The effects were swift and devastating. Mom was suspended from her job pending an investigation into her gambling during work hours and potential misuse of company time. With no income and her previous tax issues, she called me sobbing about possibly losing her apartment. "I don't understand who's doing this to me," she wept. "Someone is trying to ruin my life." "That's awful, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "Have you considered it might be someone you've hurt or betrayed?" The question hung in the air for a moment before she changed the subject. Megan's professional reputation was in tatters. 2 clients canceled contracts after hearing rumors about her integrity issues. Her company extended her suspension and expanded their fraud investigation to include client billing. "Everyone's turned against me," she complained during a rare phone call. "Years of building my career, gone in an instant." "It's terrible when people you trusted betray you," I replied pointedly. Tyler, desperately searching for employment, found doors mysteriously closed. Former colleagues stopped returning his calls. LinkedIn connections went quiet. His separation from Megan had become a full separation, with him moving to a small apartment across town. As their lives crumbled, they increasingly reached out to me for support, emotional and financial. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same people who had stolen my savings now wanted me to help them through their unfair hardships. I watched their social media meltdowns from the comfort of my apartment. Mom posting cryptic messages about fair-weather family. Megan changing her status to "going through a difficult time, true friends please reach out." Tyler's desperate LinkedIn posts about seeking new opportunities. The most revealing moment came when Tyler asked to meet me for coffee again. Unaware of my orchestration, he confided the full story of my money's theft. "It wasn't impulsive," he admitted, staring into his cup. "They had been planning it for months. Your mom first suggested it after you mentioned getting into Wharton. Megan was the most aggressive, saying you could just take out loans like everyone else. And you went along with it," I said, recording our conversation discreetly with my phone. "I did," he nodded, shoulders slumped. "But I swear, Rebecca, I fought it at first. I told them it was wrong. Megan threatened to leave me if I didn't support the family. I almost felt sorry for him. Then he continued. I know it's a lot to ask, but could you possibly help me with next month's rent? Just until I find something? I've got an interview next week that looks promising. The audacity was breathtaking. I maintained my composure, neither agreeing nor refusing outright, and steered the conversation back to his job prospects. As I was leaving, he mentioned something troubling. Your mom has a wild theory that you're behind everything happening to us. Can you believe that? I told her you're not that type of person. I froze momentarily before forcing a laugh. That's ridiculous. How would I even do something like that? That's what I said. Tyler agreed. But she's convinced someone is targeting all of us specifically, and you're the only connection. I drove home with my heart pounding. Mom was getting suspicious. I needed to be more careful in the final stages of my plan. That evening, I received a scathing email from Mom, accusing me of orchestrating their misfortunes. Only you would benefit from seeing us all suffer, she wrote. I raised you better than this. I didn't respond, but I prepared for a direct confrontation. I wouldn't admit anything, but I also wouldn't allow her to regain control of the narrative. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced the next evening, eyes red from crying or drinking, possibly both. I know it's you, she said the moment I opened the door. No one else would be this calculating, this thorough. You get that from your father. I let her in, maintaining perfect composure. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. Don't lie to me, she shouted. The IRS, the job, the landlord, it's all connected. You're punishing us for borrowing money we were going to pay back. Stealing, I corrected calmly. You stole from me. And you were never going to pay it back. Her face crumpled momentarily before hardening again. We needed it more than you. You're young, you can recover. Megan has children. So that justifies theft? Identity fraud? Destroying my future? It was my idea, she admitted, pacing my living room. I saw how much you had saved, and it wasn't fair. I've struggled my whole life while you just sailed through, everything coming easy to you. I was recording every word on my phone in my pocket. Her entitled justification, her admission of orchestrating the theft, all of it documented. I think you should leave, I said finally. And Mom? Don't contact me again unless it's to return my money. This isn't over, she threatened at the door. I'll tell everyone what you've done. I smiled thinly. What exactly have I done, Mom? Be specific. She stormed out without answering. That night, Mom called Megan with her suspicions. I know because Megan texted me a warning, Mom thinks you're behind everything. Tyler and I are coming over tomorrow to talk. This has to stop. The next day, I discovered they had attempted to hack into my personal computer during a previous visit to my apartment. Fortunately, my evidence was stored in encrypted cloud folders they couldn't access. Their desperation was making them reckless. When Megan and Tyler arrived, they found me calm and prepared. They alternated between accusations and pleas for help, growing increasingly frustrated by my neutral responses. If someone is targeting you all, perhaps it's because of something you did? I suggested. Actions have consequences, after all. Is that a threat? Megan demanded. Just an observation, I replied. Now if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. After they left, I sat in silence, contemplating the final stage of my plan. The family had turned on each other completely now. Mom blamed Megan and Tyler for taking the larger share. Megan blamed Mom for the initial idea. Tyler blamed both women for pressuring him. My revenge was working beyond my expectations, but I found myself questioning if I'd gone too far. Were they suffering enough? Too much? The ethical lines were blurring. I called Alicia, my lawyer friend, for dinner that night, needing perspective from someone uninvolved. They tried to open credit cards in my name, I told her, sharing the latest development without revealing my revenge. After everything else. That's identity theft, she said firmly. You should file a police report. Would it make me a terrible person if I said part of me is glad they're falling apart? After what they did? Alicia studied me carefully. Wanting justice doesn't make you terrible, Rebecca. But don't let revenge consume you. At some point, you have to move forward with your life. Her words stayed with me as I finalized plans for the concluding phase. I was ready to bring everything full circle with one final confrontation. 6 months into my plan, the financial consequences for my family had become severe. Mom had lost her job after the gambling investigation revealed she had been taking extended lunches to visit the casino 3 times weekly. With her existing IRS troubles and eviction, she was staying on a friend's couch and working part-time at a grocery store, a humbling change for a woman who had once criticized my unfulfilling analyst job. Megan's employer had moved beyond suspension to filing criminal charges for expense account fraud. The amounts were relatively small, but the pattern of deliberate deception led them to make an example of her. She was facing potential misdemeanor charges and the complete destruction of her professional reputation in her industry. Tyler and Megan's marriage had collapsed entirely. He had moved out permanently and was living in a studio apartment while working at a call center, far below his previous management position and salary. The career he had spent 15 years building was effectively over. I should have felt satisfied, but the toll was affecting me too. I was experiencing insomnia, losing weight, and developing trust issues that impacted my friendships and dating life. When a coworker asked to borrow $20 for lunch, I had a panic attack in the bathroom afterward. My friendship with Alicia had deepened during this time. She didn't know about my revenge plan, but she provided emotional support and legal advice that kept me grounded. We had dinner weekly, and I found myself looking forward to those evenings as an escape from my obsession. You seem better, she commented over pasta one night. More present. I'm trying to focus on rebuilding, I said, which wasn't entirely untrue. I had been researching alternative paths to my MBA, including part-time programs and additional loan options. That night, everything changed. I received an anonymous text message, "I know what you've done to your family." Clever setup with the IRS, the employers, all of it. Would be a shame if they found out. Let's talk. My blood ran cold. I checked and rechecked my operational security. Had I made a mistake? Left evidence? Was I being bluffed? I didn't respond to the message, but I spent the night reviewing every step of my plan, searching for vulnerabilities. Nothing stood out, yet someone knew, or claimed to know, what I had done. After a sleepless night, I decided to accelerate my final confrontation. If someone was threatening to expose me, I needed to complete my plan before they could interfere. My investigation revealed that Mom had moved beyond suspicion to certainty about my involvement. A mutual friend mentioned that Mom had been asking detailed questions about my computer skills and whether I seemed vindictive after the loan incident. She was piecing it together, working backward from the consequences to find the cause. I decided to confront her directly, both to assess the threat and to gather more information. I invited her for coffee at a public cafe where I could record our conversation without suspicion. Mom arrived looking haggard, the past months clearly taking a toll. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of guilt, quickly suppressed when she spoke. "I know it was you," she said without preamble. "The timing, the specific targets, it's too perfect to be coincidence." I maintained my practiced neutral expression. "That's a serious accusation, Mom." "Stop playing innocent," she hissed. "You've destroyed everything. My job, my home, Megan's marriage, all because of money we were going to pay back." "Were you?" I asked calmly. "Because according to my information, you spent it on gambling and luxury items within weeks. That doesn't sound like an investment strategy to me." Her eyes widened at my specific knowledge. "How did you?" She stopped herself. "You had no right to do this to us. Just like you had no right to take my money?" I kept my voice low. To try opening credit cards in my name while you were already under investigation? Her face paled. How did you know about that? I protect myself now, Mom. I don't trust people who betrayed me. She leaned forward, desperation in her eyes. It was my idea. The whole thing. I convinced Megan and Tyler. I told them you wouldn't miss it, that you could just delay your plans. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I recorded every word, adding it to my growing collection of confessions. Sorry doesn't replace what you took from me. What do you want? She asked finally. For us to suffer forever? Haven't we lost enough? I want justice, I said simply. And I want you to understand what you did. As she left, she turned back with a strange expression. You know, you're more like me than either of us realized. I just never had your resources or intelligence. The comparison disturbed me more than any accusation could have. That evening, Megan called to tell me Mom had shared her suspicions with her and Tyler. She says you're behind everything that's happened to us. Tyler doesn't believe it, but the timing is strange. Do you really think I'm capable of something like that? I asked, deflecting. I don't know what to think anymore, she admitted. We're all desperate. Tyler and I tried to check your computer when we visited last month to see if there was any evidence. We couldn't get past your password. The admission of their attempted hacking confirmed what I had suspected. You tried to hack my computer? After stealing my money and trying to open credit cards in my name? Is there any line you won't cross, Megan? Her silence was answer enough. Don't contact me again unless it's to return my money, I said, ending the call. The family was now openly turning against each other, with Mom convincing Megan of my involvement while Tyler remained skeptical. They were making increasingly desperate moves, hacking attempts, accusations, pleas for help. All while still not admitting full responsibility. I was facing an ethical crisis. Had my revenge gone too far? Was I becoming as manipulative and calculating as they had been? The thought kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling and questioning my choices. I called Alicia the next day, needing an ethical sounding board without revealing too much. When does justice become revenge? I asked her over lunch. And when does revenge become something worse? She studied me carefully. This is about your family, isn't it? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. There's a line, she said finally. Justice restores balance. Revenge can go beyond that, becoming about pain rather than restoration. The question is, what are you trying to achieve? Punishment, or a path forward? Her words stayed with me as I prepared for the final confrontation. I reviewed the original theft, $47,832.16 of my hard-earned savings, and the subsequent identity theft attempts. I remembered their dismissive attitudes, the gaslighting, the refusal to take responsibility. No, I hadn't gone too far. I had simply ensured that actions had consequences. And now it was time for the final act. 7 months after discovering the theft, I was ready for the concluding phase of my plan. I texted Mom, Megan, and Tyler individually, inviting them to dinner at Marcello's, an upscale Italian restaurant with private dining rooms. I deliberately chose a public location where they would need to maintain composure, yet private enough for what needed to be said. It's time we talked about moving forward, my message read. I'll make reservations for Friday at 7. All three accepted, though with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Mom's response was terse, Megan's cautiously hopeful, and Tyler's simply I'll be there. I arrived early and arranged for the private room in the back. I set up my laptop on the side table and organized 3 folders, red, blue, and green, each containing documents relevant to its intended recipient. They arrived separately but within minutes of each other. The tension was immediately palpable. Mom looked defensive, Megan exhausted, and Tyler defeated. They sat at the table I had arranged, eyeing each other warily. Thank you for coming, I began formally. I thought it was time we discussed the situation directly. Which situation? Mom asked sharply. The money, or what you've done to us since. I ignored the accusation. I wanted to give you an opportunity to make things right. I know you're all in difficult financial positions now, but I'm willing to accept a structured repayment plan with reasonable terms. Tyler looked relieved, Megan suspicious. Mom just stared at me. We could do monthly payments, Tyler suggested immediately. Small amounts to start while we get back on our feet. That's very generous of you, Rebecca, Megan added, her tone indicating she thought it was anything but. Considering everything. Before we discuss specifics, I said, opening my laptop, I think we should establish exactly what happened. I turned the screen to face them and started a presentation. The first slide showed my bank account statement with the $47,832.16 transfer highlighted. On March 15th, you took my entire savings without permission, I stated calmly. This wasn't a loan. It wasn't borrowing. It was theft. The next slide showed their subsequent purchases, Mom's casino visits, Megan's shopping sprees, Tyler's golf equipment. Each date stamped, each documented. This is how my investment was actually spent, I continued as their faces registered shock at the detailed surveillance. There was never any investment opportunity, was there? No one answered. Mom stared at her hands. Then, when consequences began affecting you, instead of taking responsibility, you tried to steal from me again. I showed the credit inquiries in my name. Identity theft is a felony. We were desperate, Megan whispered. I nodded. Desperate people make desperate choices. Like going to the IRS about unreported gambling winnings. Or alerting employers to expense account fraud. Or documenting ethics violations at tax preparation firms. The color drained from their faces as I methodically outlined exactly what I had done, step by step, phase by phase. You're admitting it, Mom said, her voice a mix of vindication and horror. You systematically destroyed our lives. I ensured actions had consequences, I corrected. Something you all seemed to think didn't apply to you. I played recordings of their separate conversations with me, each blaming the others while admitting their own role. Mom, you initiated the plan and convinced Megan and Tyler to participate. Megan, you were the most aggressive advocate for taking my money, saying I could just take loans like everyone else. Tyler, you claim you objected initially but participated fully in spending the money. They stared at each other, the last pretenses of unity dissolving. You recorded us? Megan asked, outraged. I protected myself, I replied. Something I learned to do after being betrayed by my family. I distributed the folders. These contain complete evidence portfolios of everything I've documented. Bank records, photos, recordings, credit inquiries, everything. I have multiple backup copies in secure locations. Is this blackmail? Tyler asked quietly. This is transparency, I said. You should know exactly what I have before you make your next decision. I placed a document in the center of the table. This is a legally binding repayment agreement. It specifies monthly payments over 5 years, with consequences for default clearly outlined. If you sign and comply, the evidence stays private. If not, it goes to the police, the IRS, and your professional licensing bodies. You can't do this, Mom objected. I already have, I replied calmly. The question is whether you want to face additional legal consequences. You've become a monster, Megan whispered. I became what I needed to be to get justice, I corrected. I could have been much worse. I could have sent everything to the police immediately. I could have pressed charges for identity theft. I could have completely destroyed any chance of recovery for all of you. They exchanged glances, realization dawning that I had actually shown restraint. Why didn't you? Tyler asked. Because despite everything, you're still family, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. I wanted consequences, not destruction. I wanted you to understand exactly what you did to me. One by one, they signed the agreement. Mom's hand shook. Megan wiped away angry tears. Tyler signed without looking up. I expect the first payment next month, I said, gathering the signed document. Now, I think we're done here. That's it? Mom asked. You've had your revenge, and now we just move on? We don't move on together, I clarified. I'm removing myself from this family. The only contact I want is confirmation of monthly payments. I gathered my laptop and folders, leaving them sitting in stunned silence. 6 months later, I received the 6th consecutive monthly payment. It wasn't much, just $300 split between the three of them, but it was consistent. The agreement was being honored. My life had changed significantly. After the confrontation, I had applied to several part-time MBA programs and been accepted with a partial scholarship to a respected local university. It wasn't Wharton, but it was a path forward. Mom had completed a gambling addiction program as required by our agreement and was slowly rebuilding her life with a new job at a different real estate office. Megan and Tyler had finalized their divorce but were both working to establish more honest livelihoods. The consequences of their actions would follow them for years, but they were finding ways to move forward. My friendship with Alicia had evolved into something more, our weekly dinners becoming the highlight of my week. She knew the full story now. I'd told her after the final confrontation, and while she didn't approve of all my methods, she understood the need for justice. As I closed the spreadsheet tracking the repayment plan and opened my acceptance letter for the upcoming semester, I reflected on everything that had happened. The money wasn't what mattered, it was the betrayal of trust. In dismantling their lives, I had rebuilt my own. I had discovered strength I didn't know I possessed and learned painful lessons about family, trust, and consequences. I no longer kept family photos on my phone. Instead, I had pictures of my future, the university campus, my new apartment, Alicia laughing at dinner. I was moving forward without the toxic relationships that had nearly destroyed me. Sometimes justice requires you to rewrite the rules. Sometimes family isn't who you're born to, but who you choose to trust. And sometimes, when someone dismantles your life, the only solution is to quietly, methodically, dismantle theirs in return. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you handle it? Leave your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you've ever had to create consequences when no one else would. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the quietest revenge is the most effective.